glad to be here. This is my first CJS. I'm Kathleen Davis. I am a producer at Science Friday. We are a weekly public radio show. We are produced out of WNYC studios in New York, and we air on more than 450 NPR stations across the country. Our show is 2 hours every week, and as you may have guessed from the name, we're focused on science, which sets us apart from some other national public radio shows. So I am here today to talk about a project that I lead alongside my colleague John Dankosky, who could not be here today. It's called The State of Science, and this is a recurring segment on Science Friday's radio show and our digital platforms. And it's a way to highlight science stories from across the country without resorting to parachute journalism. So I don't think I need to tell anybody here that there is a funding crisis in newsrooms across the country. And we find that oftentimes when money is tight, science reporting can be one of the first things to go. And so for us, we know that's a big problem because oftentimes some of the stories that hit people in communities the hardest are stories about climate change and illness and things like that that are really important that often don't get the funding that they need. So public radio reporters across the country have local knowledge, they have contacts, they have experience to cover policy issues that are different in every state, and these local reporters can provide context for climate, health, and environmental stories that are happening everywhere. And so what we do as part of the State of Science is tap into that local knowledge and build stories together. So stories that we have covered as part of the State of Science span a huge range of topics. We've had reporters on the show to talk about the impacts of a chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio. We've talked about changing water levels in the Colorado River and the efforts to conserve fragile coral reefs in Florida. So often we find that national news organizations focus on nationalizing local science stories, and that happens even if those stories are really rooted in a place. But we find that it's often the local context that really informs a science story. And so what we think sets the State of Science apart is that we want those little details that reminds listeners and readers that they are hearing from a real person who is from a real place. They have the expertise and they have the knowledge to build this story in an effective way. And oftentimes people if you're in New York and you're hearing a story from Oklahoma, it can be nice to really hear and put yourself in that place with those little details. And those local reporters can write that story better and explain that story better than any producer or editor in New York or Los Angeles ever could. And so what does this look like for us? We work almost every week with reporters who are either currently working on a science story or they've recently published a science story for their local newsroom, and we will do an interview with that person on the Science Friday radio show. We'll play some pieces of tape from their reporting, and we'll do a digital build-out of that story. Another thing that we are able to offer is Spanish translation for their stories, which can be hugely important for some local stories that really affect communities. We have also started working on fully co-produced stories with reporters who have experience with the topic, but they maybe haven't had the chance to really dive into it, whether that's because of financial constraints or just time constraints. And so we've been able to fund local science reporters to do some larger scale reporting projects that they've wanted to do. So 2 of those projects that we've done recently, we worked with reporter Eve Zukoff from WCAI in Martha's Vineyard, and that was a story about how offshore wind and right whales have a very complicated relationship, and kind of breaking down the myths and the truths about how those things are interconnected. We also recently had a story about how climate change and especially flooding are impacting cemeteries in southern states and the mitigation around that. That was reported by Eva Tesfaye from WWNO in New Orleans. So reporters who work with us get the opportunity, as I said, to be on the Science Friday radio show and the podcast. We've been able to hire artists to create some really lovely art for these digital build-outs and really make those stories pop. And as I said, we have the opportunity for Spanish translation. So for us, we know that as a national platform, we have more resources than many other local stations that we work with. And so we want to leverage our resources to be able to create some amazing local journalism that also has a national reach. So we're always looking to make connections with public radio reporters. So if there are any here who want to chat with me, please find me. I have some cards in my purse that I'm happy to give you. And then my email is up there and our website if you want to learn a little bit more. But thank you.